Good evening, one and all. Welcome along. It is season 4, episode 7 of the UK Dallas Cowboys fan TV show. We are live on YouTube, on Facebook. I believe we're now on Twitch over the summer since I've last been on with you gentlemen. How are you both doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Welcome back, Brian.
Yes, it's been a long summer, and I think myself and Graham are going to have a bit of an hour rant tonight, which is long overdue. But how are you both doing, gentlemen? I don't think I've spoken to you both live since the draft night, so it's been an extended leave.
Yeah, it has. It has.
It has been an extended leave, and right back into the thick of it. This is probably the second last of the sleep filled. Mind you, you guys have got college football to watch. Like regular listeners will know, I don't usually delve into college football until the draft. I just don't find the time like you guys do. Yeah, it's been a long off season. It's amazing how it flies in though. Like Jeff Reinbold always says on the NFL UK podcast, there is no off season. There's always something. You know, when you try and think back to our off season, you know, you had the Amari Cooper trade and then the Michael Gallup contract, and you know what we were going to do with Tyron and who we were going to keep. We were going to keep Randy Gregory, and then it all kicked off during the draft week, and yeah, we're and the season's not even started yet, and we're patching up our offensive line with the backup of backups. We're now all of a sudden we're all now quite happy to play Conor McGovern at left guard, and it's scary. Scary.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I saw yesterday on Twitter was Tyler Smith wasn't good enough to beat out Conor McGovern at left guard, and now he's your starting left tackle with no snaps in the off season.
Yeah, but I mean, he has played. You know, he's played 3 years of college football, if nothing else. It's not like you're taking a centre and asking him to move out to the tackle side of things. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to see, as Mike and I have been saying, the offensive line this preseason has been good at the run blocking, but it takes a while, particularly for starters who haven't played properly in preseason games, and we've only seen them in the intra-squad scrimmages against the Chargers and the Broncos. It'll take a while for the passing pass protection to settle. You probably won't see the passing game truly get into full strength until probably week 3, week 4 of this season. And I mean, if you look at some of the cuts today, there are people that are potentially coming on the market. I mean, there's quite a few first round picks from the last couple of years that have hit the market today. I mean, Alex Leatherwood from the Raiders, that was somebody that I think we were all raving about last year, potentially as somebody you could be taking day 1, day 2 in the 2021 draft, and he's already gone. You've got that waste of space quarterback from Texas A&M who got released from the Vikings. See, I can say that because he's not on the pod tonight.
Lauren is bringing the heat tonight, but
we've seen college football's back.
Yeah, absolutely. But as always, look, it's great to see Joe and Lloyd are coming in with the comments thick and fast. You know, we only have no backup quarterback, and Big Wheel with I think Tyron is done, and we may need to move on. And this is something like, obviously myself and Graham have been offline for most of the summer. Like we've kind of been working in the background, and one of the things we have been doing is writing a lot of articles up this off season. And we put out a 53-man roster yesterday, and one of the subjects we touched on in the group, that myself, Rich, and Graham, when we were talking about this, was would we actually consider moving on from Tyron, because it's a 17 million cap hit this year, and he's not going to play.
Yep.
And you could move on from him. It's nearly a 13 million saving this year, and I think it's a 4 or 5 million saving the fall next year. So maybe is a time.
Yeah, I mean, can see why Jerry's saying, if he can get back for December, great. I mean, if you're going to cut him, if you were going to move on from him now, then by all means, that's 4 million against the cap this year and a saving of 13.5 million. You then got you've got an 8 million dead cap next season. Alternatively, you can go with the hope that he can come back, which is obviously what we are doing. You're going to end up, you've got him on IR. We've got to pay him anyway, so we've got the funds to pay him at the moment. And then, if he decides to hang it up next year, you can get out of it. You can retire him on a post June 1st, and then it's 4.4 million next year and 4 million the year after that. Or if, because he's retired, you can actually put in a claim and get some of that money back as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Graham, look, the comment came in here from Joe, and I'm going to ask you, because I mean, you and Rich have begged for this for 3 seasons. We've been doing this 3 years. And I remember nearly the first podcast we did, you both asked, when are we getting a replacement for Tyron? When are we going to get someone that's going to back him up? Because we've had Cam Fleming, we've had Cam Irving, we've had Tynan Seeke, and now we're going with Tyler Smith. I mean, as Joe said, can we really trust Tyler Smith to protect our 40 million quarterback?
No. But you're going to have to. That's the frightening thing about it. The best offensive linemen in the league have a job right now. The Raiders have moved on from Alex Leatherwood for a reason. Again, it just goes to show the draft is a complete lottery. Leatherwood was going into his second season, and it hasn't worked. But to answer Joe's question, we're going to have to. We are simply going to have to, because unless you're wanting to start somebody like Josh Ball, who isn't even up to being swing tackle, you're not going to pull a starting caliber left tackle off the street right now, because a starting caliber left tackle signed his contract in February, March, when free agency opened. The idea was that you do like a Lowell Collins, you play him inside for a while, and then you kick him out to tackle when he's ready, or you slide Tyler out when Tyron goes down. I've said it for 3 years, and we haven't even got to week 1, and he's down. Who'd have thought?
Yeah.
Anyway, but moving on. There's a reason he wasn't in the same conversation with the guys that went in the top 15. He's not the polished article yet, and take a couple of minutes and think of the pass rushers in the NFC East, and then put him up against a player who's hoping to be a left tackle. It's a little bit scary, if I'm honest. I know it's a complete side point, but think what Jordan Davis is. I mean, it's a scary prospect. It's a scary prospect.
like I think where Jordan Davis is going to be is more on Conor McGovern and Tyler Biadasz, and that scares the Jesus out of me right now.
But I bring it up.
Yeah.
You can't split your left guard in two. Our left guard being Conor McGovern.
But Joe did make
paint that scenario when we play the Eagles, right? You're going to have Tyler Smith, who's not ready to play tackle. You're going to have a backup's backup, a left guard, and you're going to have Biadasz at centre. I mean, and you want to go and win the Super Bowl? Really? Nah.
But you could say, look at the Bengals last season. The Bengals had a subpar offensive line last year, and were one or two plays away from being holding the Lombardi Trophy. Until that final drive when Aaron Donald went absolutely beast mode and stopped short of grabbing their helmets and ripping them off and using them Rudolph style. Okay, he kind of picked that up last Thursday in their intra-squad scrimmage, but if it wasn't for Aaron Donald, I think Joe Burrow would have his first MVP, and would have his Super Bowl trophy and the ring and everything like that. So it is possible, and it's just a case we don't know because. And again, Paul brought this up in some of the podcasts the last couple of weeks where we've been discussing the preseason games. We've been swapping guys, and you do it anyway in preseason games, but you've been swapping guys in and out. We have had no consistency along that offensive line to generate. So until you actually get all the guys together and you get them doing 50, 60 snaps a game all together, you don't know what you have. Now, it could just... In the first 2 weeks, everything could click for Tyler Smith, and if you think what Tyron Smith was year one, if it wasn't for the fact he was going up against DeMarcus Ware in training camp, going up against him week in, week out in practice, would he be the player he is now? You might have got there about year 2, year 3. You certainly wouldn't have had him, as the incumbent starter by the end of year one and potential Pro Bowler and All Pro and all that sort of stuff. So it can still happen, And we were talking last week. RJ was obviously on our podcast on Thursday. He's been quite critical of the plan that the Cowboys have had in place. And I was trying to say, well, they did have a plan. They could have gone and spent mega bucks in a free agency, and then you could have brought in a player who's commanded that salary, and he doesn't fit into the Dallas scheme. We could go out and pick up Alex Leatherwood, and look at the guys like Leonard Davis that we've picked up in the past. He was a cast off from Arizona, came in, we moved him from tackle to guard, and he became an All-Pro. Kyle Cozier, Doug Free, guys like that other teams would say no, they're not for us. Now, it's whether Joe Philbin can do this, and that's as we've been saying all season. I think this is something that I have a concern with. Is I don't like Joe Philbin. We've been missing that nastiness since Mark Colombo left. And while we certainly don't want offensive coaches smacking each other around the same way that Mark Colombo did when he was in New York, we miss that aggressiveness within the unit. And I think we're one step up above from Paul Alexander when he came across from Cincinnati. But, McCarthy's already got rid of one of his old friends in Mike Nolan from the time that he took the job on. Will he move on from another one? I don't know. And we just there's so many questions that we have going into this off season, going into this season that really we don't know what's going to happen, but they could come out and surprise. Kellen Moore could dial up the perfect offensive game plan to counteract our weaknesses. Who knows?
Yeah. Guys, by the way, we do see there are a lot of comments flying in about the 53-man roster, and we are going to talk about that in depth. So just because we're not pulling up the comments doesn't mean we can't see that they're there. So just keep them coming in. As we've always said with this show is about you guys interacting with us. We're only as good as the questions you're putting to us and the information you want to get from us. You guys are as vital to this program as what we do. So make sure keep those comments coming in. We do appreciate them, and we will get to them in time. Graham, I could kind of see you flinching there when when Lauren mentioned Kellen Moore and the Kellen Moore plan, and I think I know where you're going to go with this in terms of how much flexibility and how much is Mike McCarthy going to allow Kellen Moore away with.
Well, I remember a comment that Jay Tuck made on Twitter, and he said, I think it was on his show, and he said, Kellen Moore takes a little bit of this, and a little bit of that, and a little bit of this, and a little bit of that, and flows it into the one playbook. I would go out on a limb and say that if Mike McCarthy doesn't make the divisional round, he's out the door.
Yeah,
I would say, and if he has any sense at all, he will rein in Kellen Moore. Have you noticed that all the Kellen Moore head coach talk has dried up? You noticed that? When was the last time you saw any of that? If they would stick to the run game that we know and love from 2015, 2016, when Zeke was at his height, Dak was just coming into his own. The Cowboys, I keep harping back to it, but the Cowboys would reach the 10. They'd reach the 10-yard line, and you'd go and make a tea or a coffee or have another beer or whatever, because you knew they were going to punch it in. It would take them they might take them 3 downs, but they would punch it in. That's gone now.
Yeah.
I mean, Mike's even joining in. Mike commenting to Dan Quinn. The next head coach talk. I think I referred to it in our chat as Project Peyton. They're leaving a considerable amount of money for Sean Payton next year. They're keeping all the draft picks for Sean Payton next year. They're not giving up any capital to go and get somebody to replace Smith. So,
and Joe is coming in here with the comment: if we start the season 0-2, McCarthy should start packing his bags. I mean, I think there's a distinct possibility that could happen.
I think, Jerry has only moved on from one coach mid-season, and that was Wade Phillips, and that was because the team quit on him. Unless you see, if the guys are going in and they're not trying at all, then move on. But and then you would see Dan Quinn come in as at least as interim head coach. Now we saw what Dan Quinn was like as a head coach last year when he took over for the New Orleans game because McCarthy had COVID. But I think unless it's a complete collapse by the Cowboys and the guys are just going through the motions, trying to put things on tape so that they can get away at the end of the season, then you're not going to see McCarthy go until after the season. And then you still got to actually get in and get some sort of compensation package with the Saints for Peyton as well. But we better not go into too much, just in case we're dealt with for tampering at all. But
on that comment, bearing in mind that we play Tom Brady week 1 and a Super Bowl champion week 2, so there is every chance the Cowboys are 0-2. We have two top teams coming into AT&T, so don't be surprised if they are 0-2. I think the pivotal point is after week 6, because by then we'll have played all 3 divisional games. I think if there's a negative record after 6, look at it then. I mean, I'm just looking at the record. Well, it's not an easy start. Week 5, we've got the Rams in LA, and then we've got that trash team in Philly in week 6. So it's not the easiest of starts. God, I just keep thinking of that Eagles and Redskins. Whoops, nearly. Eagles and Commanders pass rush. Interesting, we don't have to play Thibodeau to begin with, right enough.
That was I did not like seeing what happened to Thibodeau at all. I mean, I know he plays for the Giants, but you do not want to see tackles like that in the game.
Yeah, rivalry aside, that was pretty poor. Pretty poor. To the 0-2 start, I would prepare for that. To be perfectly honest. I mean, we've got all the time in the world to prepare for the Buccaneers, but remember, Tom Brady has all the time in the world to prepare for us as well. And remember what they always used to say about the Patriots after the bye week. Patriots after the bye week were always extremely difficult to play, and Tom Brady played his part in that.
Yeah. The other thing is, I mean, obviously, Tampa's offensive line's in a state of flux as well. So, and obviously, they'll be going up against one of the strengths in our defensive line. The guys that we've kept, and I know you were slightly surprised, Brian, that you were expecting Carlos Watkins still to make the roster. I'd heard, that the writing was on the wall that unless they were going to try and deal somebody like Tristan Hill for picking up an offensive lineman or whatever, then it was going to be somebody like Carlos Watkins, who's got $1 million against the cap. And you see, I mean, the other one I've heard this week, Brian Broaddus has been saying that some of his contacts within the Cowboys are saying that they're looking at Ridgeway and they're saying, well, maybe Ridgeway isn't a one technique tackle, and there's potential talk of switching him across to the offensive side of the line of scrimmage. So, you could at some point see that Ridgeway could be a guard. If McGovern's not cutting it, switch him across. Cowboys have had good success in the past. Back in the 80s, okay, you could develop guys more because there wasn't a salary cap or anything. But guys like Danny Noonan and who else? I think Mark Tooney actually was a guy that was originally, he was a defensive lineman, and then they switched him across to offensive line, and vice versa. So guys like Landry and what have you, they had plans like that. Now you don't have because of the salary cap age that we're in, you don't have the ability to do that as much. But if all hell's going to loose, then Ridgeway would be a bloody good guard for pass protection and clearing the way for running backs as well. So and certainly I think the offensive emphasis this off season certainly has been getting the running game going first of all. So, and Jerry even said last week on First Take that we go as Zeke goes. So you are going to see an increase in the run game, first of all.
Yeah. Jay, I'm going to throw it back to you before we move on to talking about the Seahawks game.
I just remembered. I think it was in the 53-man exclusive chat that we had on the go, Brian, that the Cowboys will start the season with one on the offensive line. The Cowboys will start the season with one player over 3 years' experience.
Yep.
So read into that what you will. I want to believe. But I don't see the evidence just yet. It's a very, very young group, and it's if Terence Steele continues to project and Tyler Biadasz works out all the kinks and the snap and direction and becoming the leader on the line, and McGovern steps in, and if he's a confidence player and he realizes that the left guard position's his to lose, and it's a lot of ifs, buts, and maybes. I mean, if all that can come together, maybe it's just a little bit tough to see, to project. Yeah, time will tell. But I'll reiterate one last time. Some of us saw it coming.
Yeah,
we did. Some of us saw it coming.
So, if we flip it over and look at the game on Friday night against the Seahawks, so obviously we won 27-26. A lot of that seemed to be on the back of great defensive play rather than great offensive play, because I mean we had four interceptions again. It seemed to be you have an interception, and the thing was, we weren't playing scrubs in that game. We were playing their two starting quarterbacks because they still haven't decided who their starting quarterback is for week 1.
Well, they have now, but they hadn't at that point in time. Geno Smith is their starter. Pete Carroll came out of the game, and the post-game press conference actually anointed Geno Smith as the week 1 starter for the Seahawks. But yeah, I think we talked last season that the emphasis of our team has switched from offense to defense. I think that's going to be the case this year. I think we're going to continue with the takeaway machine that we had last year. You're going to see, a lot of the balls last night or on Friday night were tip drills. It's something that, and because you're playing a cover 3, the guys are actually facing the quarterback, so it is a case that they can see what's coming to them a lot of the time. Where a lot of it was man-to-man coverage that we were seeing when Marinelli was running the defense. So, and I think, as we've said, the focus on a Marinelli defense was the bend and don't break. Let them make the catch. Make sure you get the tackle. Don't give up the long pass. And then, make them go 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 plays to get down the field. And, you try as an offense and try and put together a 13-play drive without holding penalties, false starts, incomplete passes and all that. That sort of defense, it does work, as does the wheeler dealer style of defense that Dan Quinn's got.
Yeah, I saw that smile on holding penalties there, Graham.
I'm sorry. No, I'm just trying to remember what a drive without offensive holding felt like. That's been a while as well.
I don't think we'll have many flags with 52 offense holding 15-yard penalty this year.
We'll make it work, Brian. Don't you worry. We've got plenty of guys under 3 years' experience. We'll get those calls. Don't you worry about that.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm joking. Obviously, I'm joking.
Maybe instead of 52, it'll be 73 or 66. But we do digress. One of the points here, and this was something we spoke about in the group chat amongst ourselves. Our rookie Sam Williams was balling against Seattle. He did get a sack, and I believe he got a sack against the Broncos the week before. Sam Williams seems to have one pass rush move. He gets home. It works. I mean, is that good? Is it bad? Do we expect him to develop? Or are we happy with that?
I mean, I remember I was particularly, I think myself and Paul were particularly hard on Williams when he came out of the draft. Does it continue when he goes up against the best 32 tackles in the world? Hopefully. But like you're saying, Brian, one-trick ponies don't do well against the ones. You're coming up against seasoned guys who have been there, seen it and done it. So the only thing that kind of puts them off their stride is the unknown. If Williams is going to try and utilize the same move all season long, it'll get picked up in the film. It's not going to last very long. But saying that, he's a rookie. He can only beat who he's come up against, and got to be honest, it's encouraging. That was a great point that Mike made. I mean, try and remember the last time we were more excited about our defense than our offense. I mean, Dallas is the home of the triplets for a reason. We've had multiple triplets over the years. Can you switch triplets to defense? Can we go with Diggs, Parsons, and Lawrence? Could we? Can we flip it? Because that's what's happening right now. The strength is moving to the defensive side of the ball. Because we're hitting on our defensive picks. And if Sam Williams wants to join the club, then all for it.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll flip this question to you, Lauren, because I mean, I remember the team of the 90s that won 3 and 4 years, and I know you can go back to the Doomsday 2 defense when it was balanced, that we had superstars on both sides of the ball. The Hollywood Hendersons, the Manster, you Charlie Waters and Chuck Howley back there. You had great defensive players who complemented the offensive players. But it seems to be a case that is now gone. And, as Joe has said, that, we've had offense for years, and now the offense is broken and the defense is there.
Yeah. And again, this is what we're seeing with the salary cap. You only have a certain amount of money, and you need to focus on it. You can have teams like the Ravens, who have had strong defensives, take them to the Super Bowl. You've ended up with quarterbacks like Matt Hasselbeck, Joe Flacco, the 49ers. You see Jimmy Garoppolo's renegotiated his contract this year. He was the worst quarterback to play in a Super Bowl. In terms of, statistically, he was the worst quarterback to play in the Super Bowl in modern era. And only because he only threw something like 15 passes in that game. It's you spend your money, you have a limited amount of money, you focus on trying to improve one area of the team, make that your strength, and then hope that the liability of your team, i.e. the opposition, your offense or your defense, depending on which your strength is, you hope that you can ride out any problems with that. So you do see teams that are strong defensively, are mediocre offensively, still get to the playoffs, and then it's can the defense drag them kicking and screaming into further into the playoffs? Can you get something from that offense in the playoffs? Once you get to the playoffs, all bets are off. You're back at 0-0. And anything can happen. As you've seen last year, it was the fourth seed of the NFC won the Super Bowl. And they went into that on the back of Kyler Murray completely collapsing the last two games of the season, last five or six. As soon as DeAndre Hopkins went down, actually, Kyler Murray lost one of his main targets, and the Cardinals just lapsed, and that allowed the Rams to sneak into the division, and rather than going in as sixth or seventh seed into the playoffs, and having to go away all the time, they eventually they got to have a home game. They got to rest before going out on the away trips for the championship games. So it's one of the things. I mean, particularly for guys like me who were brought up on football in the days before the salary cap came in. Yes, you didn't like the way that guys were basically treated as slaves, effectively. If a guy retired and then decided he wanted to come back, he had to come back and play for that team. And that's why you see guys like Barry Sanders hung it up. I mean, he couldn't get away from the Lions. The only way he could get away from the Lions was actually to quit. You see things like that. It's great now, but at the same time, you've got guys that are now bouncing around. They're going into the NFL Hall of Fame having played for 4 or 5 different teams. Great. They've been great on all these teams, but you've not almost got the same sort of loyalty. You can't say, "Oh, that guy, great, that guy's played for the Cowboys," but he only played 2 seasons for the Cowboys. He's more likely, if you were to be entering as one team, it would be probably the team he's been drafted by or spent the most time with. So it's a sad thing with the salary cap, but that's the way we are.
Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned Barry Sanders at the Lions. I mean, Megatron is another one. I mean, he was there for 8 years, and that's post the salary cap era. But I mean, I suppose there was also injuries there with Megatron. And I mean, to be fair, he did everything he could in those 8 years. But is there anything else you want to discuss about the game on Friday, or do you want to start talking about the 53-man roster?
It's not necessarily. It's not necessarily about the game. It's more to do with my thoughts on the kind of shortened preseason. I mean, you think that the ones didn't play in the last game, so they've effectively had 2 halves of 2 games, and then they go another almost 2 weeks without another game. It's just a little bit strange to me that are they going to be football ready? Is that? I mean, I know they're putting the pads on at training, and they have training camp for a reason, but I don't know. Like I would say, if you're going to have a 3-game season, 3-game preseason, start it this Sunday. Start the NFL season this Sunday, as opposed to leaving it another week. Do you get what I mean? Like I just think it's strange. Like it's almost like teams that bench starters because they won the division, and then they go out and choke in the wild card round because they've given their time. They've given their starters the time off. It just with such a young offensive line, I would think the last thing they wanted right now was time off. and they want to get in there and they want to play and they want to get used to something and get ready for the season. I don't know. It's just maybe it's just they see it as the fewer preseason games the better. But I don't know. With such a young unit, I would think they want to play more, not less.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't see our starters play. They were all playing in these intra-squad scrimmages because, yes, it's going up against the opposition. You're going up against guys that don't know what, obviously you've been going against each other in training camp. Your defense gets an idea of what the offensive playbook is. So going up against another team and having them run their defense against your offense, that sort of thing, it does it in such a way that you should be able to limit injuries to your starters. And then obviously you do have issues where, Tyron Smith, I mean, he went down off the ball. It was a non-contact injury. He was running down the field, and somehow he planted wrong or whatever, and that was the hamstring pulled off the bone. So you can see how quickly the more and I can see you wincing, Graham.
Yeah.
The more that you play these guys, the more injured you are, or the more chance of injury. I mean, if you think again, going back to the 1980s, they had 4 or 5 games in preseason, but that was mostly because the salaries that they were getting at that point in time were absolutely minuscule compared to what they're getting now. Half of these guys were taking jobs during the off season. They weren't working on conditioning. So these 4 or 5 games plus the training camps were starting earlier. There was a whole lot of conditioning, things like that to work up to, and that was basically because these guys were coming in 50 pounds overweight, and you're trying to get them into some sort of playing condition, and that's why you had rosters of 120 rookies before the veterans even reported. I mean, obviously, when we had Drew Pearson on, Drew Pearson had to knock out 120 rookies before even getting to the main training camp. That first year with Dallas, and then he was back at square one because he was a undrafted free agent, and you had guys like Philip Bob Hayes in front of you. So the more easy they've made it for people, and again because of the salary cap and everything like that, it is you've got to try and your funds are basically involved with all these players that you've got. As soon as somebody goes down, there's a cap hit for the guy not being available, and then you've got to bring somebody in to take his roster spot. It's not like you can sit there and say, "Oh, right, we'll put him on IR. We don't need to bring anybody up." You've got to have 53 people on the roster every time, otherwise you get fined by the league. So you're diverting funds into replacing that guy, and it's that's why you want to make sure your starters get quality work with these scrimmages. You're not going to see them in preseason games now, though. I think going forward, I think next year you'll probably see us have the 3 preseason games, and we'll have scrimmages against those 3 teams that we're playing, and then you'll see the first teams play against each other there, and then the second, third, fourth will play in the actual game, and see what you can develop as depth.
Yeah. So I mean, you've kind of segued into the discussion there about the 53-man roster, and obviously, look, we've had the final roster cuts. We know what our roster makeup is. A lot of people have kind of been commenting on a few things. So just to explain the roster and some of the cuts today, because while some people have been cut, they will be back tomorrow. So obviously, to be on the roster, you have to be on the roster today. So Tyron Smith, Michael Gallup, James Washington will all either move to IR or PUP tomorrow. Damone Clark, I know, is already on IR, so he'll probably redshirt the whole season, and I think they expected that anyway. But talk of Cooper Rush and Will Greer not being there and us not having a quarterback, we will have a quarterback tomorrow because we can bring back Cooper Rush as a vested veteran. The fact we don't have a kicker, a long snapper, and CJ Goodwin, who will be our special teams captain, again, they're vested veterans. They don't have to go through waiver wires. So a lot of what you're seeing today is about getting young talent onto the roster. And I was saying this to Mike before we went on air, that we've actually maintained all of our 2021 and 2022 our draft picks. All of the draft picks we made are on the roster. Yep. So, if you want to take it away, gentlemen, what are your initial thoughts on the 53?
Well, two things flag up to me. The fact we've kept 9 offensive linemen. Is that because we're not sure of our 5? I mean, that might be perfectly straightforward thing to do. I always thought you kept 8 offensive linemen. You kept your kind of interior guy, your swing tackle, and your best backup wherever he was. Maybe it's not such a big deal. Maybe I'm just reading something into it. And we've talked about Will Greer or Cooper Rush. Who's to say it's one of those guys? Who's to say they don't like somebody on the Packers, for instance? Maybe McCarthy's got an eye on an ex-Packer, or because they might land on a practice squad somewhere. But as soon as their agent gets a phone call, do you want to go and make $1 million with the Cowboys, or do you want to stay on your current practice squad? I'll go and make $1 million with the Cowboys, and they're off. So you never know. I mean, right now there will be some amount of work being done in the front office. Who's on a practice squad? Who can we go and take? Are they better than Greer? Are they better than Cooper Rush? So there'll be all sorts of conversations going on just now. Take it away, Lon.
Cooper Rush, as we've said, he's a 4-year veteran, so you can bring him back. You can tell it. We've cut him. Doesn't have to go through waivers, so nobody can put in a claim on him. We can say, right, we're going to bring you back. Much like when we cut Kellen Moore, one of the training camps as well, and brought him back 2 days later. That's purely a movement so that you can get one of these guys onto IR for designated to return. Damone Clark is on the NFI, so he qualifies in 6 weeks' time. We can bring him back as well, make a decision, and then either put him onto IR as well. But I mean, who's to say? As we say, the front office should be looking at all the cuts that are being made, all the roster moves, see who's there. I mean, I joked at the beginning that there's a Texas A&M quarterback that's just been released. It was a first-round draft pick last year. That time's gone with the Vikings, but again, is the Cowboys system better suited to him? You never know. What was your evaluation going into the draft? Do you think he's got legs? Hopefully you don't. As we've said before, if your number one QB goes down, that's your season down the pan generally. If he goes down for longer than 2 or 3 games, your offense, your season's down the pan. So, great if you've got somebody like Cooper Rush, who we know can get you a win, as he did. He ground out a win in Minnesota last season. If you got somebody like that, great. Is it worth throwing the dice and picking up somebody who's been cut just because they didn't work out in whatever situation they were in before? Cowboys might be a better situation. So you're looking at all these guys. Alex Leatherwood, as I said, he's been cast off by Las Vegas. He'll end up getting a job somewhere else, or he'll get picked up by somebody else. And it might be that the scheme that they're running, if it's zone blocking, if it's man to man, or whatever benefits him, and if he gets a slightly different coaching that it clicks, that can be something. So our front office should be sitting there now. Chances are they'll be there till 3-4 in the morning, contacting these guys, and trying to make deals. And you could see the bottom of the roster being churned even further. Not just putting these guys onto IR. You could see some of these guys that were saying, "Oh yeah, bring them back on the practice squad." They either get pinched by other teams, or we bring them back, or we say, "Wait a minute, we've picked this guy up instead." Sorry, you had a good off season for us, but off you go. So we just have to see how it and it'll still be fluid all the way through the season, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like anybody that's ever watched Hard Knocks, the last episode in the season of Hard Knocks, they always say to the guys on the bubble, "You're in the 53, but your challenge is to stay on the 53 every single week." It's not like right, we've got our 53, let's go play football type idea. It's they will be constantly evaluating every single team, and if they think they can get a better player than you, you're out the door. That's why it's so rough on the 50th, 51st, 52nd, 53rd guy. Another tight end is thin. My God.
So if we kind of look at the roster, right? So they've gone with 24 offensive players, 28 on defense, and one special teamer. As we say, that will change tomorrow. And if you look at last year, Will Greer, Corey Clement were both brought in after the initial cuts. So players will move about. But I mean, is there any, like you kind of mentioned tight end there, Graham, is there a position group that you're worried about? I mean, I think we've done offensive line, but if you want to talk about it some more, we can definitely go there. But I mean, is there a position group you're worried about? Is there a position group that you're kind of going, why are they gone very deep there? Or is it give me your thoughts.
Well, question for you, Brian. How many on the Cowboys roster right now, other than Michael Gallup and CeeDee Lamb, how many of our receivers have a touchdown in the NFL?
Zero.
That's a flag.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. That's a flag.
And we have kept 8 receivers.
It wasn't so long ago we had CeeDee Lamb as our third receiver.
Yeah.
Now, in November, that may well be a different story. We could have James Washington if he survives the season. We could have him back. We could have Michael Gallup back. Ifs, buts, maybes. Wow. Yeah. Let's see what happens when CeeDee Lamb gets doubled every single game for the season.
Yeah.
Because they're not doubling anybody else.
Yep.
That's true.
I think it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, you've had Jerry Jones come out in the last couple of days and say that, Michael Gallup, if the Super Bowl was tomorrow, then Michael Gallup would be playing. Michael Gallup has been running routes off to one side, and so he is obviously getting close to coming back. Now, do they think it's going to be week 2? Do they think it's going to be week 3, or do they put him on IR for 4 games and then bring him back? Now, this one about CeeDee Lamb. I think the beginning of camp there was question marks. CeeDee Lamb, if Dak threw the ball and CeeDee Lamb didn't get a proper catch on it, he would get up and he'd actually look at Dak and say, "Oh, that was high," or whatever. That's not, he should be getting up and going, that's me, that's my bad. And I think towards, that was talked about on a couple of podcasts, and I think CD Lamb's taken that on board. I think he has developed as the camp's gone on. He hasn't been as flashy this year as he was last season, but I think the chemistry is there with Dak. And it, again, we just need to see how teams are going to scheme CD Lamb, particularly while Gallup's not there. You're basically going in within the passing game. The two biggest options this year are, at least for the start of the season, you're going to have CD Lamb and you're going to have Dalton Schultz. And then you got to get, even if you got Pollard coming out into the slot, you've basically got a no-name opposite. But as I've said before, if Dak's elevated his game, he should be pretty much on a level with somebody like Aaron Rodgers, who he had Devontae Adams and a bunch of no-names. And those no-names have now, he's now started again this season because Valdez Scantling's gone off to Kansas City. Devontae Adams is now at the Raiders. He's basically starting again from square one with, I think the only guy he's got is Randall Cobb. And I haven't seen if Randall Cobb's made the cuts this year, because obviously he's getting a little bit long in the tooth as well. But Randall Cobb, if he made it, it'll be Aaron Rodgers' sort of safety blanket for the start of the season as well.
I think they have Alan Lazard.
Yeah.
Alan Lazard.
Yeah. So okay, he's got two guys that he's fairly au fait with, but I mean, again, in preseason he wasn't hitting these guys in camp. He wasn't hitting these young guys in camp. There was a whole lot of question marks. Not that I follow the Packers devoutly, but if you were watching around the league and things like that, they were saying, "Oh yeah, Aaron Rodgers isn't hitting his young wide receivers correctly." It's going to take a bit of time, and I think there was a bit of frustration with Aaron Rodgers. So we'll need to see how that works out for us. Anyway, bringing it back to us. So
yeah. Graham, you kind of mentioned tight ends. Obviously they've gone with Dalton Schultz, who is going to have a serious workload this year. And Joe has thrown in the comments, and I'm going to pull it up, that 1,000-yard receiving season. He might very well have that. Then the other one we have is Peyton Hendershot and Jake Ferguson, two rookies. Is that group quite thin?
Well, when you consider that we ended the preseason last season with Blake Jarwin and Dalton Schultz, I would say it's a downgrade. I mean, fair enough. We never had Jaws for much of the season, but wouldn't you rather have two tight end targets as opposed to one? And what you're saying is absolutely right, and Joe's probably absolutely right. I would expect Dalton Schultz to get 1,000 yards. Let's face it, somebody has to. And it may as well be Dalton Schultz. His targets are going to go through the roof. If you're still drafting your fantasy team, try and get Dalton Schultz in the 5th or 6th round, because that would be a draft pick well spent. Again, rookies, untested, unknown. I mean, with Jake Ferguson, we could be talking about the second coming of Jason Witten. We simply don't know, but it's all unknown, and that is what is causing so much anxiety in Cowboys Nation. Just on a quick Google, I mentioned in our private chat, the Cowboys have the 5th youngest team in the league. does that seem Super Bowl contender? I don't know. Maybe it does. Maybe you've got a group full of hungry young guys. Maybe I'm doing Ferguson and Hendershot a disservice, but you can only go by what is on paper just now, and on paper, it's young and it's thin. Outside of Schultz, I mean, see if Dalton Schultz picks up an injury, good grief, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see them as I don't see Ferguson and Hendershot as. Are they pass catch? I mean, maybe I'm doing them a disservice. Are they pass catchers or are they more blocking?
So, Ferguson was brought in, and this was the thing that Mike kept saying to us during the draft: is the guys they're bringing in are big, physical, and guys who are going to help you out in the run game. And Ferguson wasn't a great catching tight end at Wisconsin. That's not the way Wisconsin play. Wisconsin beat you up on the line of scrimmage with 12-man personnel, and they will run and run and run. It's no coincidence Jonathan Taylor came from Wisconsin. But Hendershot, I'm not too sure. But I think, as you say, Graham, if Schultz goes down, season's over.
I wouldn't say season's over, but again, it's another body blow for Dak. I mean, I haven't seen much in terms of the Dak and Cooper relationship. I know it wasn't great, but at least Amari Cooper attracted attention away from somebody else.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of long term, look, say Schultz does have a great season. Say he catches 1,300 yards and 8 touchdowns. He's on a 1 year deal effectively. So you've got the question again. What do we do with Dalton Schultz? The running. It's the running gag on offense. Thin, extremely thin. See if your starter goes down, it's a hell of a fall to the next guy. I mean, I know the saying, next man up and all that kind of stuff, and yeah, that's good. But I prefer if my next man up was a second round pick, as opposed to a walk on. And there seems to be a lot of that in the Cowboys offense right now. Don't get me wrong. I love Dalton Schultz. I think he's going to have a great season. But again, where's the safety net? Do the Cowboys have a pass catcher, or are they going to have to go and pull somebody off the street? I think it's the latter.
I would agree with you in general, but I mean, obviously, the fact that they are going with 2 rookies this year behind Schultz will give you a chance to see what they've got in these 2 guys. If Ferguson looks like he is the next coming of Jason Witten, who was a 3rd round pick and what have you, then great. You can say at the end of the season, right, off you go, Dalton, go and get your multi-millions elsewhere. One of the things that guys like Bill Belichick and what have you are lauded about is that they know when they're almost at the point of getting diminishing returns from the players that they've got on their roster, and they get them off their roster and they get draft picks or whatever. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo, he was supposed to be the heir apparent to Tom Brady, and Bill Belichick went off and traded him to San Francisco. Has he been the savior to San Francisco? Sure, he took them to Super Bowl, but they're already looking at a new era with Trey Lance. You've got guys that, who was it? Jamie Collins, who was going to be, he was coming to the end of his rookie deal, was all ready to say, oh yeah, I want this multi-million-dollar deal. Goes to sleep one night, wakes up the next morning, he's been traded to Cleveland. And that was Bill that was Bill Belichick's modus operandi, is that he would actually go out, he would know whether it was worth investing in the guy, whether it was worth letting the guy go off and get the compensatory pick at the end of the year or whatever for the next draft, use that to package up, bring new players in. And, that's why the Patriots teams are constantly evolving. 1 year you had, Brady was working with 4 wideouts. The next year he was working in 12 personnel. It did constantly change, and that's one of the things. And I think that is essentially what the Cowboys are trying to do. They're trying to keep young, keep the hunger up, rely on that hunger of trying to get the next contract. I know it gives everybody the bubble guts, but it can work out, rather than you having these guys that are coming in, and when they're coming in, they're going, right, well, you've paid me $15 million to come in here. I must have been doing something right before, so why should I listen to your coaching staff who are trying to get me to change my game? So can you get the right chemistry or not from the guys that you got, and get that? Would you rather have them hungry, or would you have them either having come in and say, yeah, I've arrived, and rest on the laurels of what they've done in the past? So so going back, we'll see what these guys can do. You're not having to ride them on the bench. You will see, particularly if we have question marks about the offensive line, you will see 12 personnel more often than not. So you will get to see Schultz will stay in as a blocker, and you'll bring Ferguson out as a receiver, vice versa. Get an idea of what they can do. And as I say, it's constant evaluation of the players that are on the field, so that when it is happening, and you have to make these decisions at the end of the season, you've got that basis to see how they've done, and at least give you the foot on where you reckon they are on the curve about how they're going to progress for the rest of the year.
So we've gone an hour and 10 minutes and feels like 20 minutes, gents. So I don't know how much Mike is going to give out to us, but I suppose if you're looking at the way the roster is split, as we said, they've gone 24, 28, 21. And Lauren, you mentioned John Ridgway potentially moving over to the offensive line. Do you think they've gone too deep with the defense with 28 players? I mean, 11 on the defensive line, 6 linebackers, 11 defensive backs. Like, do you think it's that too much, or will we see a bit of movement there tomorrow once we start moving players around?
I think we'll see movement, and I mean, again, picking up on things that have been talked about in other podcasts. One of the things, Kelvin Joseph going into that Seattle Seahawks game was literally, he was one of the last players to get changed into his uniform because he was working on resistance cords before as part of his warm-ups. He only went in, he played one or two snaps, and then was listed with concussion. We've seen before that you've had guys that have who was it, Rico Gallers, where he picked up a concussion in preseason, and then he was put on IR and stashed for the season. I certainly think that if you were to pick your starting corners or your top corners, I think Kelvin Joseph made, Deron Bland certainly went past him. I think Nashawn Wright's had penalties in the preseason games, but Nashawn Wright has had strong camp in general, and he finished off the season there with a pick against Seattle as well. So he was one of the guys that was getting, you get an interception, and all that. So Kelvin Joseph, they could stash again, especially as potentially you don't know what the situation is with him vis-a-vis whether there's going to be suspensions or not. I see Benny's there talking about Isaac Alarcon.
You beat me to it, Lauren.
Yep. They'll have cut him because as soon they can keep him, he automatically goes to the practice squad because he's on this international player pathway. As soon as he's on the active roster, that's it. They lose that roster exemption. So we have, at the moment, because of Isaac, we have one extra guy over and above anybody else who doesn't have an international player pathway. So if it's 65 guys that you're allowed on the roster, we've got 66. And he doesn't account for anything on the salary cap at the moment. As soon as we bring him onto the playing roster, and I think you certainly have seen a progression from year 1 to year 3, and there was talk that he would make the 53 outright, but I think they're just going for that, especially with there being so much state of flux with the starting lineup at the moment. I think that's the whole reason why they've stashed him. They know what they've got with him. They can bring him up at any point in time and start stop blocking him being an international player pathway and start his NFL career properly. So we just need to see what happens in the next few days, to be honest. And because you still got about 10 days, this could still go. We could change the roster 4 or 5 times in the next 4 or 5 days. And the roster that we're seeing next Monday, as they start preparing for Tampa Bay, could be completely different. Certainly players 35 to 53 or 35 to 65 or whatever.
So the question I'm going to I've 2 more questions for both of you. And Graham, I'll throw this one to you first. So give me a guy on the roster that you were surprised they kept. Give me a guy that you were surprised they cut. And go into a bit of detail if you're happy to.
I'm surprised they kept Tristan Hill, to be perfectly honest, but he did have a good camp. Also surprised they must believe in Dorrance Armstrong because they've kept Terrell Basham as well. Now, if I've done my sums properly, that's 11 defensive linemen, not including Micah Parsons. So straight away you're thinking, right, so 11 players to play 4 positions. Now, I understand there's a little bit of rotation involved in there, but 11 players. That was a surprise to me, and that's not including Parsons. You could line up. Parsons could spend half his time at defensive end. And nobody would bat an eyelid. I mean, fair enough, you could bring him down into the rush, but like on a blitz or whatever. But if you're going to line him up, you're going to line him up. If you're going to ask him to go and blitz, you're going to put him on the defensive end. So, like Lauren was said, it's a constantly changing thing, and I would expect a little bit of change there. The guys I thought they wouldn't keep. A kicker would have been nice. I can't deny that I'm glad that the Maher experiment is still up in the air right now. But we kick off in is it 13 days time? So we play the Buccaneers on Sunday. Is it Sunday night football? We play the Buccaneers.
Sunday night football, obviously 1 a.m. for us.
And we don't know who our kicker is.
I think we do. Again, as we're saying, this is purely for the sake of roster manipulation that we've got rid of Maher at the moment. He's a guy that you can say, sit tight, we'll bring you back on Tuesday. or bring you back Wednesday, Thursday, whatever. But
I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I would say right now the front office are going, what kickers were cut? Who's available? And as you say, Lauren, they have Brett Mark. Don't worry, you're coming back. You're coming back on Thursday. You're coming back on Friday. And suddenly, Cowboys signed Matt Gay or Matt Amendola or, Kai Forbath or someone like that. And it's, well, this guy became available. Sorry, Brett.
Yep. I mean, but you have to say...
Flip that the other way. Don't worry, Brett. We'll put you back on the roster. And we'll give you a phone. We'll give you a call on Wednesday or Thursday, and then somebody like I don't know who's kicker needy. Somebody phones him in 5 minutes time. Yeah. Hey, Brett, do you want to come play for the Jets? Yeah.
No, so he's a vested veteran, Graham. So Cowboys have first call on him because he's played 4 years in the league. Yeah, so the Cowboys have first refusal.
How long does that last for? Because that can't.
Yeah.
Like they can't just leave him out there.
Yeah. What will have happened with guys like this is that they will sit down and say, right, we're cutting you today, but your contract that you've signed will be honoured. When we bring you back, we'll bring you back at the same terms as that. We might bring you back for a little bit more. I don't know, and just sit tight. And unless somebody comes in and says, right, I'll pay you another 100,000 a year or whatever, you're not going to up stakes. You've already at least arranged your digs for the next month or whatever. On a month-to-month basis, you've already paid the deposit. You've got you've paid for the moving vans to bring your stuff into town. You're going to sit, if you've got supposedly a guarantee that you're going to be playing for them for the next 2-3 weeks or whatever, you're going to sit there and wait for that, unless there's a significantly better offer comes on board for that.
Yep.
To finish off your question, Brian, just having another look there. It's a shame they didn't keep Lindstrom, because I wanted.
Yeah.
I mean, I wanted Lindstrom to push to start. I don't think I've made any. I've not left any doubt that I'm not too set on Biadish. Maybe it's Matt Farniok. Maybe Farniok goes and becomes the centre at some point. But I just think it's another. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think with Lindstrom, the problem was that obviously early on in OTAs he developed, I think it was appendicitis. Now whether he actually had to undergo an appendectomy or not, but if he did, you're then talking about cutting into muscle, cutting in and around muscle, flesh, everything like that. You've got a period of time where you've got to wait for that to heal. That affects your conditioning, that affects your strength. And if you're coming in as a rookie, okay, we're talking that Tyler Smith is ahead of the game on what Connor Williams was like when he came in 4 or 5 years ago. But you're already behind the 8 ball from guys who've been in an NFL strength and conditioning program for 1, 2, 3 years or whatever. So if you've got the added complication that you're trying to deal with recovery from an operation or something like that, I think, and he didn't show out in training camp. Whether it was something like the setback from the appendectomy, or the appendicitis anyway, whether it was a setback from that, he wasn't showing strong to at least battle Farniok for the backup. And obviously they were looking at McGovern in the Seattle game, much like they did with Williams last year. They had McGovern snapping the ball as well, so you got other options for them. Should you need to go to second or third third plan B, plan C, whatever.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think the hope is for them is that Lindstrom does come back round, he clears waivers, and they can get him on the practice squad. And then, as you say, Lauren, if he is recovering from an appendectomy, I mean, I've had that surgery, and it does wipe you out for a couple of weeks. And 2 weeks of preseason, not being able to lift weights, not being able to do the strength and conditioning work you need to do, it's going to affect your play. But I mean, Lauren, if I say to you, who was your surprise cut? Who was the guy you were disappointed to see? Who was the guy you were surprised to see actually make the roster?
Well, the one that was a surprise cut to me was I thought Malik Davis actually. I thought the Cowboys, especially when we were talking, and you're saying, oh, there's Cooper Rush has been let go. Will Greer's been let go. At the moment, we've only got the one QB. I thought you might have stuck around with it, gone heavy at running back. I thought Malik Davis, if anything, was slightly ahead of Daldo in preseason.
Yeah,
certainly in terms of production. I'd be very surprised if Malik Davis comes back onto our practice squad. I think he will get. I can see roster claims going in around the league for Malik Davis, especially as he was he coming out of Florida. He wasn't even the feature back in Florida, and scouts were going, who is this guy? Why are we needing to look at him? I think Dane Brugler didn't have him rated highly. And then Bobby Belt had mentioned to Brian Broaddus that, this is a guy you need to look at. And Broaddus said, but, the tape doesn't have it. But then he showed up in training camp. And the Cowboys have found a way to work him and get it going. So that's a surprise for me. I don't think there's anybody that I'm surprised has made the roster really. I wasn't surprised that Tristan Hill was kept, and at the sake of Carlos Watkins, I'd heard rumors that Watkins was going to get let go last week, unless there was some situation where you were trading for somebody like Isaiah Wynn or one of these offensive tackles who come into the end of their first contract. The decision with the team is that he's not working out for their team, but he might work out for somebody else. You offload him. You don't have to worry about signing him to a second contract. And if he balls out for that team, obviously hits the free agent market, and you go, oh wait a minute, we made a mistake. Bring you back in the next year. So. I wasn't surprised at Carlos Watkins being cut as well. So
I'm gonna pose one final question, Chin. Let's try and get this wrapped up in the next 2 minutes and get out of here before 10:30 and before Mike Poland has a heart attack. So we're going back to live Thursday and Tuesday shows. So by this time next Tuesday, if I could grant you one wish for this roster, be it a player, be it a position group, what roster change do you want to see by this time next Tuesday?
Within reason.
Within reason, because I know, like, it was me that pushed the Quentin Nelson narrative on our 53-man projection, but we know that's not going to happen. So, yes, within reason.
I mean, I asked the reason because straight off the bat would be, the Cowboys give up 2 first-round picks for Cooper Kupp. But it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen in a month of Sundays, is it? It's not going to happen. Not in the eve of the season. No chance. I don't see that right now. It's going to happen. Lauren, you go first if you don't mind.
I'd like to see us bring in somebody with a little bit more experience on the offensive line, so that you can go into the opening game with Tyler, because I think it's certainly anybody you bring in now, they're behind the 8 ball to pick up the entire Dallas offense. And unless it's somebody who's been here before, had the experience of playing under Kellen Moore or whatever, or a similar playbook. So if you can bring somebody in that potentially, if it doesn't work out with Tyler Smith immediately, you can 3 games down the line, you can bring him in and let Tyler Smith develop as a rookie again. But I'm and I think Gallup will stay on the roster 53. I don't see him being put to one side for IR. And potentially I'm quite happy with that. Again, we can see what we've got week 1, week 2. If you get Gallup back week 3, great, you're ready to go. And you can make a decision about these receivers as well and decide if you're going to cast off. I mean, as we were saying on Thursday night, guys like Houston, who, the one great thing is he's got the rapport with Dak Prescott. He didn't have that rapport with Cooper Rush. He didn't have it with Will Grier. He didn't have it with Ben DiNucci. So you got to see what he can actually do when he's playing with Dak Prescott. The one thing that was actually interesting, and I said this to you guys on Monday, I actually thought Ben DiNucci had a better preseason this year. I think he might, if we don't bring him back to the practice squad, I can see him going to another team this year, where in previous years I would have said, what the hell is he still doing in the league? Now, okay, he was up against 3rd and 4th strings, but I've certainly seen improvement this year from him. So he's not the laughing stock he probably was.
Fair comment, Graham. I'll leave the last word with you.
See, they won't be able to grant my wish, because my wish would be that they give up a 1st round pick or a 1st and a 2nd round pick for a starting caliber left tackle under 25. But it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Oh, breaking news! No,
it's not. It's not going to happen, because see, if you've got a starting left tackle under 25, they're so rare. You're not going to give them up. I mean, you see guys like Alex Leatherwood getting released because he wasn't up to his 1st round grade. He wasn't up to the contract that he signed with the Raiders. And I have no doubt he'll go and sign for somebody else. And maybe he's not the. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs. Maybe he's not the perfect fit for the Cowboys, and we shouldn't put round pegs in square holes. But they need offensive line help. If they can go and get an experienced guard and centre for 3rd, 4th round picks that aren't necessarily 1-year rentals, maybe they've got a couple of years left on their deal. Maybe we could prize away. I mean, no one's. See, that's the other thing. No one's given up a starter for a 3rd or 4th rounder. So you're going to have to take somebody who isn't quite good enough, but is better than what we've got.
Well,
I mean, this is how ridiculous it is. Go and look up Connor Williams' contract with the Dolphins. Wow. I mean, there were pitchforks ready to run him out of Dallas, and he goes and gets a sweet deal by the beach.
Yep.
Yeah.
they couldn't grant my wish. Anybody that's worth a first round pick, the team won't give up, and anybody that's worth a third and fourth round pick isn't good enough to start for who he's playing with already. So it's so difficult. That's why I keep saying that quality offensive linemen go in the first and second round, and we delayed and we CeeDee Lamb'd and we this, that, and the other, and we didn't fix what was needed. And there we go, and take what is almost needed, what will be hopefully a left tackle, and the guy goes down, so he gets flung in at the deep end, and you're stuck with McGovern, because by no means, let nobody kid you on, Connor McGovern is not a starting caliber offensive lineman. He is the next option, because if that was the case, he would have started over Connor Williams. So do you get what I mean? Like, nobody's given up talent on the eve of the season that's worth their kind of draft value.
Yeah,
you'd have to give up a second rounder for somebody on the edge of starting. Now, he's maybe not worth that second round pick, but they know the Cowboys are in a hole, so they're going to hold them. We would get held to ransom right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just going to have to grin and bear it and hope that these guys elevate again. And go back to what Lauren was saying. Maybe that has to be where the elevation is. We've given a lot of time and effort to the defense, and the defense is in a good place. Nobody has a top 10 player at every position. It doesn't happen, like Lauren's saying, with the salary caps. That is the Cowboys' kind of required elevation to get us to a Super Bowl. I just wish there weren't so many needing elevated, if you get what I mean. So many needing to improve. I mean, Zach Martin can only do so much. You know what I mean? Yeah.
On that note, I think we're safe to say we better wrap up before Mike gets on with us right now and kills us. So Mike will be back on Thursday night at 9 p.m. here in the UK and Ireland, 4 p.m. on the East Coast, 3 p.m. in Texas, and 1 p.m. on the West Coast. We are moving back now. We will have a Thursday and a Tuesday show going live. Make sure and give a follow to all of our partners. So Cowboys Experience and the Cowboys Media team, who always help us out so magnificently over the last few years and continue to do so. We do have all of our other creators that we do work closely with, so make sure and give them a follow and check out their shows, check out their podcasts. Gentlemen, anything to say before we close?
No, I think we've rattled around at the moment until we know what the final the true final roster looks like. I think we've discussed it ad nauseum at the moment, and I think I've probably said more than I should do.
Well, look, the 2022 season is on our doorsteps, folks. For those of us like myself and Lauren who are college football fans, Saturday is the big day. Next Thursday will be the kickoff of the NFL season, so strap yourself in for the next 5 months. For us here in the UK and Ireland, make sure the coffee is good and strong, because there are going to be a lot of late nights ahead for all of us. But we will bow out and we will say good night, and Thursday tune in to Mike and the gang.
Yeah, have a good one, guys, and I'll catch you next time I'm on.
See you next time.